Welcome to this edition of Eye on America, Crime Without Punishment. I'm Michelle Miller. Our network and local stations have come together to investigate the staggering number of unsolved murders in the U.S. As homicides have surged nationally, arrest rates in homicide cases have dropped to about 50%. But the trend has not impacted all demographics equally. Over the last 2 decades, clearance rates for white victims have increased, while homicide arrests for Black and Hispanic victims remain much lower. We'll take a deeper look in Chicago, where families are outraged as police close cases without charges, and in Baltimore, where officials believe they have a solution to the rising number of murder cases where no one is arrested. But first, we start in Jackson, Mississippi, which is the highest murder rate in the country per capita. CBS News chief investigative correspondent Jim Axelrod speaks with mothers who have lost sons to murder and say they're not getting enough help from police.
Everyone in this room who has had a member of their family murdered, raise your hand.
When we started calling mothers who'd lost their children to murder in Jackson, Mississippi, word got around, and more than 30 people arrived for our interview.
Put your hands up if you feel like you've had to investigate your own loved one's death.
The pain in this room in Jackson was overwhelming.
They didn't investigate my case.
And more just kept coming, wanting their stories heard.
Even the detective when I talked to them, they hung the phone up in my face.
Willie Mack is himself a former homicide detective at the Jackson Police Department.
Where the ambulance at?
His daughter was shot to death in 2017.
Hang on, how many years were you with Jackson PD?
24 years.
You had 24 years in, and when you call the detective investigating your daughter's death, you don't get your calls returned?
I don't get no call returned.
To understand better the depth of their suffering, we sat down with 3 mothers from the group.
My son, his name is Kenlon Thompson Jr. He was murdered April the 1st, 2021.
Zachary Ryan Robinson. He was murdered on April 29th of 2014.
Ryan, he was murdered November 26, 2020 on Thanksgiving, a day after my birthday.
Margie Allen, Danita Williams, and Lucinda Wade Robinson are talking about their sons, all younger than 22, all gunned down in the city of Jackson, Mississippi. Population, 153,000.
Has there been any arrest made in either of these 3 cases?
No.
Not one arrest?
I was showed a picture of my baby on the side of the road. I was showed some information, and I was told to go solve my own crime.
Go solve your own crime?
And bring them the evidence, and I would take it to them.
In Jackson, the capital of Mississippi, the numbers are stunning. 156 homicides last year, one of the highest per capita homicide rates in the entire country.
Do you feel murder is being treated differently here?
Murder is at the bottom of the totem pole. It's normal. A young Black male is going to die tomorrow. We have 3 over the weekend. We can't get to you right now.
The whole system is backlogged.
James Davis is the chief of the Jackson Police Department.
Does not solving homicide cases erode the trust the community has in the police department?
Well, of course, we tell these citizens the truth. We don't tell them that we can solve a case without the facts, you know?
Chief Davis told us Jackson PD's ability to solve murder cases depends on processing evidence at the state crime lab, which he says is overwhelmed.
I can use more police officers. I could use more homicide detectives. But if the state is backed up, the court is backed up, we will still have the same problem by developing these cases that we're already doing.
FBI research suggests homicide detectives should oversee no more than 5 cases per year. Jackson PD has 8 full-time detectives. That's enough for 40 murder investigations. Last year alone, they had nearly 4 times that number.
I don't think any police department in the nation can say that they got enough resources.
Jackson homicide detective Sergeant Kevin Nash works in an office where each desk is piled high with files. He knows that means victims' relatives aren't going to like the pace of solving their loved one's murder.
Sergeant Nash, I talked to him and he said, well, you know, a lot of y'all come down here and act like y'all children are perfect. I said, no. I said, first of all, I'm not acting like my child is perfect, but my child did not deserve to be killed in the street.
But Sergeant Nash says he and his colleagues are doing the best they can.
I'll be honest with you, when your loved one is killed, you can never do enough to solve that case. I call them back when I'm available. It may not be right then when they want to. And remember, if this was your child, you want immediate answers too.
I will always tell you that the Jackson Police Department can do a better job.
Jackson Mayor Chokwe Antar Lumumba knows all too well what unsolved crime can do to a family.
My brother was shot in the head in Jackson, Mississippi. So we're no friend of crime, right? And no one was ever arrested for that.
But points out his police department makes arrests in 6 out of 10 cases, above the national average.
I get the feeling no matter how often you talk about it, the tears don't stop.
No.
You just lay in bed at night and just cry all night, and you get up and try to fight more to get justice for your child. It's too much.
3 weeks after our team was in Mississippi, Jackson police made arrests in the case of Margie Allen's son, a year and a half after his murder. We turn now to another U.S. city grappling with unsolved murder cases. Reporter Megan Hickey from our local station WBBM Chicago takes us inside her city, where some murder cases are closed even when no suspect is charged.
Chicago mom Tina Lyles lost not one.
He had a horrified look on his face that I never have seen.
But 2 sons to gun violence in less than 6 months.
And I said, no, not again. You gotta be kidding me, not again.
5 years later, no arrests. The brothers were 2 of the 660 homicides in Chicago that year. As hundreds of mothers like Tina wait for justice, a CBS News investigation found making an arrest is not the only way Chicago police close a case. We learned that while Chicago PD says their clearance rate for murder was nearly 50%, the actual arrest rate for homicides last year was just 24%. Police use something called exceptional means, where they take credit for clearing a case, even though justice for families is never served.
I don't really like coming down here, like I said.
That same year, Anna Villada and her 15-year-old brother Diego were walking down their alley to get lunch. 2 men jumped them, and Diego was shot in the head. Anna said goodbye to her little brother in the hospital.
And I told him, you really can't leave me. You can't leave me by myself.
They actually made an arrest in Diego's case. But according to CPD records, this case was cleared in 2021 using exceptional clearance because prosecutors declined to charge the suspect. Police also solve cases using this method when the prime suspect is in jail for something else, is dead, or there's not enough evidence, and even when the wrong person is arrested for the crime. Between 2017 and 2021, cases cleared exceptionally with no charges grew from 37% to 51%. For Anna and her family, it gets worse. They never knew Diego's case was closed until we told them.
For them not to even give us one phone call to tell us the case is closed, it's sad.
CPD and the state's attorney's office declined to sit down and talk to us about it, instead pointing fingers at each other, leaving loved ones without answers.
Can you tell me anything that could help me sleep better at night? Or give me peace?
After the break, a mother who's been seeking justice for her murdered toddler for over a decade. Homicide clearance rates in Minneapolis are at an all-time low, and the mother of a murdered 3-year-old says one reason is because people with knowledge of these crimes won't speak out. Jennifer Meyer from our local station, WCCO, reports.
The day after Terrell Mays Jr. celebrated Christmas with his family, the 3-year-old and his siblings heard gunshots. A stray bullet struck Terrell as he ran up the stairs to safety inside his North Minneapolis home, the year 2011.
He was only 3. He didn't get to live his life.
For more than a decade, WCCO has followed his grieving mother's push to find her son's killer.
I want the killer to know you can't run. God know everything.
Year after year,
I know you tired of running, because I'm tired of running with you.
Marsha Mays has stayed the course.
To the killer, I'm still looking for that justice.
While investigators worked leads and offered a sizable reward.
We need a solid witness that really knows something about this case.
I miss my baby. My baby meant more than me to life.
Years after losing Terrell, she remembers her youngest son.
Do you still think about who could have done this?
All the time.
Terrell's killer has never been caught. Knowing the gunman responsible may be living free weighs on Marsha.
In my eyes, people are suspects to me.
What is that like living that way?
It's hard. It's hard. It's evil. It's hard. It's some dysfunctional.
Are police doing enough?
Do I feel as if they doing enough? No. Should they have still been out here knocking on these doors? Yes. Some of these people still over here. Somebody still know what happened at night.
Homicide clearance rates in Minneapolis have taken a nosedive. The department sends data to the FBI annually. It records the number of homicides the department cleared that year. As the national average hovers at a historic low around 50%, Minneapolis plummeted below that in 2018, bottoming out at 38% in 2020.
Minneapolis police tell us homicide investigations are complex and clearance rates are impacted by a number of factors. MPD says it's reviewing internal data for accuracy after we showed them this data.
WCCO spoke with Lieutenant Richard Zimmerman earlier this year. The head of homicide said unsolved cases keep him up at night.
They all weigh on you, to some degree, because there's a mother or brother or sister or a son or daughter that lost a loved one.
Zimmerman noted there is no statute of limitation on homicides and said tips are crucial.
I've never run into a case that is not solvable. It's just a matter of, does the person that knows something about it want to help now or not?
Zimmerman said despite officers leaving the department in droves, the number of homicide detectives has stayed at 12. And as murders have increased, MPD turned to state and federal partners for assistance. FBI, ATF, and BCA agents are embedded with the homicide unit.
That's helped immensely. It's been very helpful for the cases and for the victims' families.
MPD says according to their records, clearance rates came up in 2021. Sharing numbers yet to be published with the FBI, they say will show a 20% increase in cleared cases. Noting internal partnerships, community partners, technology, and tips all play a role.
We actually care about these victims. We actually care about the survivors of the victims. And about getting them some sense of justice.
But Marsha believes the erosion of trust with police also has an impact.
So you think if there was that more community trust that maybe they'd solve more?
Exactly. I got trust in some, not all.
While Marsha waits for justice, she continues to speak up.
When you pass by here, you should always know that a 3-year-old was killed here in this area.
She visits Terrell's Memorial Garden to find peace. It's a place she connects with the son who will never grow old.
You should always know that his family, our Mazes, are looking for justice.
There's a $60,000 reward for anyone with information leading to an arrest in the murder of Terrell Mays Jr. Moving now to the West Coast, where the percentage of murders solved is significantly higher in Sacramento County than the national average. Local police credit the combination of manpower and technology. Here's Julie Watts from KOVR Sacramento with the report.
Now to an arrest in a crime that police say tears at the fabric of community safety. A homeless man charged in the attack and murder of a woman with autism. Her body found along the American River Trail.
It was a brutal crime that rocked the region. 20-year-old Emma Rourke went out for a walk on the American River Trail and never came home.
So you can't unsee this. This is as bad as it gets.
The young woman with special needs was tied up, raped, and murdered.
This type of evil will not define the city of Rancho Cordova.
The suspect? A transient man who detectives were able to identify, locate, and arrest in a matter of days, despite the fact he had no known address. One of 19 homicide arrests out of 22 murders in Sacramento County so far this year, where the sheriff's department does make arrests in the majority of homicide cases each year. A stark contrast to the national average, where FBI data reveals homicide arrests plummeted to just over 50% in 2020, a 50-year low.
Your agency has one of the best homicide clearance rates in the country. Why?
Well, it's not an accident, and it's not luck. There's a couple of reasons.
Sacramento County Sheriff Scott Jones explains much of their success is due to staffing. They have 3 dedicated homicide teams, each with 5 experienced investigators rotating through 10-day shifts to avoid burnout. And those teams have help.
We also have some cutting-edge stuff that is, well, frankly, we were the first agency in the country to use some of this stuff.
He notes they were the first local law enforcement team to use the crime-fighting database Palantir for street-level crimes. It was initially used by the FBI and CIA to track terrorists. Jones says his department was also the first to create a video surveillance registry, where citizens could register their home cameras to be used in investigations. A program that initially faced criticism from privacy advocates. And Jones credits a combination of license plate readers and ShotSpotter technology for enabling them to identify suspects and witnesses even when shootings aren't reported.
What we found when we got ShotSpotter was that a lot of gunshots went unreported, which was shocking to us, but in some neighborhoods, I guess it's routine or they don't want to call the police.
He says Crime Stoppers is another valuable tool. The tip line, based in Canada, ensures tips stay anonymous and can't even be subpoenaed by U.S. courts.
So this is our evidence room.
Lieutenant Girdlestone, who oversees centralized investigations, credits a mixture of modern technology and old-school police work for their high homicide arrest rate.
What you get in the first 24 to 72 hours is pretty much what you'll get. Being proactive instead of reactive on these cases is kind of paramount for homicide investigations.
And once they've collected that evidence, forensics are key. They use tools like this IBIS ballistics identification system, which can trace a shell casing back to a gun used in previous crimes.
So every gun sort of has a unique fingerprint.
It does. And you're able to test that with our IBIS system.
They also work closely with the Sacramento DA's office, which pioneered the genetic genealogy crime technology famously used to solve the East Area rapist Golden State Killer case.
Your relationship with the DA's office gives you access to their DNA technology.
Correct. We can get a rush on it and have that information back by the next morning, and we're never stopping.
And he notes quick DNA was crucial in the Emma Rourke case. They got a match on the suspect from a previous arrest. They also relied heavily on surveillance cameras, cell phone data, and old-fashioned detective work to track down the suspect and make an arrest.
The manpower, I mean, those guys and gals on that team, they specifically 24/7 pushed everything they had to that family.
And while Emma's parents declined an interview, in a statement, her father credited the team, saying, "We are most grateful for the thorough investigation of Emma's death," adding, "The homicide detectives in the case showed Emma's mother and me a great deal of compassion as well." Coming up, we traveled to Baltimore to see how an innovative partnership could be a model for other cities trying to stop the surge in unsolved murders. This is Eye on America. To close our show, we look at a possible solution to the rise in unsolved homicides. In the city of Baltimore, there were at least 338 murders last year. Jim Axelrod takes us inside a new approach from federal, state, and local authorities working together under one roof.
His killer was standing on that end.
We've documented a troubling trend.
Were people getting away with murder?
The rate of making arrests in murder cases is at a 50-year low.
Baltimore police are pleading for help as they work to solve 16 shootings and 28 armed robberies.
Baltimore is no different, where police solve less than half of the homicides. Except here.
Plenty of room, big space.
They just might be finding a solution to this disturbing problem.
There it is.
It's an approach overseen by Eric Barron, the U.S. Attorney in Maryland. Barron hopes to boost the rate of homicide arrests with more intelligence developed from a partnership housed in a nondescript warehouse in a secured location we've been asked to conceal.
This is the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force.
You had a couple search warrants you did?
A strike force of local and federal authorities taking aim at Baltimore's violent crime.
The law enforcement community is so balkanized. You got local, state, federal. Here is where we can put all or most of them together in one place, sharing information, working together.
16 people, you heard that right, shot over the weekend alone.
We visited after a violent Father's Day weekend added 6 new homicides to the city's total.
So this is a map that we generated of all the homicides and shootings in 2021 in Baltimore City.
Intelligence analyst Billy Nichols is the dot connector in chief here. At least 338 homicides in red last year alone.
They are in every portion
of
the city.
Each morning, Nichols opens an email with what's called a 24, a fresh report of each homicide, shooting, and questionable death in the city in the last 24 hours.
The first thing I'm looking for is really to see whether or not our victim has anything to do with any of our cases. Because, you know, if that's the case, then it seems the logical thought would be it has something to do with the ongoing investigation.
Nichols worked the streets for more than 20 years as a Baltimore police officer.
So you might get something in a 24 that connects up to another homicide investigation.
Or another federal investigation.
Triple C was as organized and savvy as they are violent and relentless.
The idea is to build big cases that take lots of murderers off the street at once, like the 15 Triple C gang members linked to 18 homicides and 27 other attempts. They were indicted last summer on drug, racketeering, and conspiracy charges.
This business was built on violence, murders and shootings of rival gang members and drug dealers.
John Lenzner was the acting U.S. attorney in Baltimore at the time.
One indictment can not only lead to violent gang members serving in prison, but can also help a city clear a number of homicides that have gone unsolved for a number of years.
Eric Barron, the current U.S. attorney, calls it the Al Capone strategy. The violent mob boss wasn't busted for murder in the 1930s. He was convicted on tax evasion charges.
The problem is a 50-year low in clearing murder cases. The solution, if I hear you right, is cooperation.
Absolutely. It's the biggest part of the solution. Cooperation, not just among law enforcement, but the community as well.
For more reporting on this series, visit cbsnews.com/unsolved. And for live coverage of breaking news 24/7, stream us right here on CBS News. I'm Michelle Miller. Thank you for watching this special edition of Eye on America.